G'day everyone, welcome to the video. Today I wanted to show you something that has come to light regarding the CGT changes and the indexation model, how it will apply to non-residents in Australia. So here I'm referencing an article from the Financial Review written on July 13. So just a couple of days ago. I'm recording this on the 15th of July. The headline: Budget's nasty, CGT surprise for Australians doing a stint overseas. Now, what has happened here, the crux of it is that there has been a pretty, I would say, aggressive measure towards non-residents that has been legislated as part of these CGT changes that it wasn't announced in the budget. It has come to light now that we're having a look at the legislation. So this has just been pushed through behind the scenes, and if people hadn't been reviewing the legislation line by line, we wouldn't have even known about it. The pollies have just pushed it through. So let's have a look at the article here. It says, Australians who work overseas will lose access to any capital gains tax discount on investment properties from the 1st of July 27 if they relinquish Australian tax residency during their time abroad. We've got a comment here from an accountant that says it is surprisingly harsh. I would have to agree with that. And I actually think for some people, some expats who are non-residents who may still own property in Australia, they'd have probably some harsher words to describe what this new measure is doing. So previously, owning property as a non-resident, it wasn't ideal, but if it was something you wanted to do, you could work with it. You could fit it into your plan. What is happening now in this legislation that has been pushed through, it's going to change that value proposition for a lot of expats. For a lot of people, they will decide, I suspect, that it's just not worth owning property as a non-resident. Let's continue on down. It says, to qualify for the new CGT indexation regime on an investment property, an individual must not be a foreign resident or temporary resident, which is the same thing as being a non-resident for tax purposes, at any time during the testing period. We've got some comments here from another accountant from KPMG. He is saying that he's confirmed that based on his interpretation of the legislation, so this is quite new and we haven't had any guidance from the tax office on it. So what's people are sort of commenting on it here, they're basically interpreting the legislation for what they think it is going to entail, how they think it's going to be applied in practice. So it says non-residents will not be eligible for the new indexation CGT discount. You must be neither a foreign resident nor temporary resident at the time during the period. And here's sort of what I was talking about before, guys. Currently, if Australians work overseas and become a non-resident for tax purposes, they lose access to the CGT discount on a proportional basis. That's nothing new. That's been in place for some time, but it wasn't necessarily a bad thing, particularly if you maybe had a longer term plan to come back to Australia. Then there's an opportunity there to sort of dilute the time in which you wouldn't be eligible for the CGT discount when you spend more time later on being a resident in Australia. You dilute that non-residency time down and it could sort of have a CGT outcome that you could probably live with in some circumstances if owning property in Australia was important for you. But where these indexation rules have taken a rather aggressive turn compared to what the rules have been in the past, it's here. The practical consequence is that a relatively short period of employment overseas, so maybe you've gone overseas for a couple of years, you're a non-resident during that time, it says it may prevent access to the new indexation regime for that property despite decades of Australian tax residency beforehand. It potentially captures Australians who have spent the overwhelming majority of their ownership period working and paying tax in Australia. So normally you would get the CGT discount for the time that you were a tax resident. These new rules are saying that's not going to happen after the 1st of July next year. But you happen to have an overseas assignment before eventually selling the investment property. Goes on to say it's relatively common for people, particularly if you're in finance or something like that, to work overseas for a number of years, London, New York, Hong Kong, Singapore, and so on. But it's not just going to catch out finance professionals, guys. This is going to catch out anyone who is a non-resident who still owns property in Australia. You need to be very careful here because this could change everything for you. The budget change will affect investment property owning Australians working overseas after 1st of July, as well as Australians currently working overseas who will be doing so after that date. A significant cohort will be impacted are those already working overseas non-residents and then return after July 2027, inadvertently causing a tax issue that they may not have been aware of. Like I said in the past, when you re-establish residency, you would have normally got access to the CGT discount once again. This is saying that's not going to happen under the indexation model, if my read on this is correct. So this is pretty heavy stuff, guys, for property owners. And what I'm going to do now, I'm going to show you the actual law that we're talking about here. This is the Treasury Laws Amendment Tax Reform Bill number 1, 2026. And as you can see here, its status is Act. It's already been passed by Parliament. This is already law. So this is probably going to happen unless there's a change in government and they throw it out, but there's no guarantee of that. Even if there is a change of government, there's no guarantee that this particular aspect of the law would be revoked. It's worth remembering that the previous changes to capital gains tax and the primary residence that I think was in 2017, sometime around then, that was done by the coalition government. So you can't necessarily rely on one side of government to save you here. You just don't know. So this bill here, this was the bill the first bill, I think there's going to be 2 or 3 of them that are going through and doing all the CGT changes that we knew about from the budget. Let's have a look at the actual law now, the actual legislated act. And here we are, Treasury Laws Amendment Bill 2026. The section in question here is section 114.25. And it says, an individual must have been an Australian resident for the entire testing period starting on later of 1 July 27 and the day of acquisition and ending on the day of the CGT event. That's when you sell the property down the track in order to access indexation. It goes on to say, if at any point the individual was a foreign or temporary resident, a non-resident for tax purposes, indexation is wholly unavailable. So they're saying here, indexation is just not available for anyone who held property and was a non-resident for tax purposes at any time throughout the ownership period. So I'm going back to the article here, and now they're referencing Robin Jacobson from the National Tax and Accountants Association. Robin has said, it may be a harsh outcome for someone to lose indexation on the entire ownership period starting from 1st of July 27. when they may be a foreign resident for only a portion of that time. But again, this is consistent with not permitting foreign residents to access our tax concessions. I don't know about this being consistent. Sure, non-residents couldn't access the discount before, but they didn't block you for the whole time if you were going to re-establish residence after. So I would say this is a pretty big departure from what the rules had been in the past. So guys, if you are a non-resident and you own property in Australia, you're renting that out, you've got an investment, you need to be very, very careful about this. What are your future plans for this property? There are a couple of pathways that I can see of how you could navigate this. None of it's going to be a silver bullet, but potentially you can sort of mitigate the damage of this if you're willing to make some moves sooner rather than later. So if you have a plan to sell at one point in the future and you're not happy with giving up half of your gains to the government, then you might want to be looking at this. So there you have it, guys. Another little hand grenade hidden deep within the budget. Wasn't even in the budget papers, I don't believe. It's just come to light now that we're seeing the legislation. This certainly will change the plans of some non-residents and whether or not they choose to hold property. Anyway, guys, I just wanted to show this with you. This is pretty big news for expats. If you have any questions, you can head over to our website. There's a link in the description. You can get in touch with us from there. If you want to do some tax planning around this, we can assist with that as well. We'll leave it there. Thank you for watching. Catch you later.